Producer Hannah, and there's Stephanie Bell, and we are Wake Up in Missouri. Glad you're with us. The numbers are 573-874-9390 if you want to weigh in on the show. Big show today with Scott Faughn joining us at 7:10 to catch up on what's going on in Missouri politics. I know
I have my finger on the bleep button already.
He is. I understand. But I understand. In addition to being the publisher of the Missouri Times and the host of This Week in Missouri Politics, that he is also the founder of the Ali Marmol fan club. And so we'll ask him about that. Woo! Holy cow. Caught my attention.
How do you really feel about the skipper there?
I hope he opens up about his feelings about that renewal of Marmol's contracts. Barbara Buffaloe, ahead of the city council meeting tonight. She'll be with us at 7:35. And Cheri Toalson Reisch, who promised us a large announcement at 8:09, 8:10, 8:08. You won't want to miss it. Somewhere in that time zone, she will join us. And we'll hear what her big announcement is. Can't wait to do that. Along with the regular features, which you look forward to, as do I. Yes. It was all over. Oh, and we've got some new. Haiti is melting down.
Yes.
Haiti is melting down. Led by a gang. Leader. Apparently, it's the barbecue gang. And there were videos being posted earlier last week before, with he's known for burning people alive in their house, and he was shown eating the leg flesh off of one burn victim.
Is that legit? Like, it's not just the internet being the internet?
I saw it on Twitter.
Oh.
Must be legit.
Yeah. Have you been following Kate Middleton Twitter?
I have not, but we do have an important Supreme Court argument today, and I guess Andrew Bailey will be there in force, right?
Yes.
Talking about that, and Eric Schmidt was on Fox and Friends earlier today. We'll play some of that sound at the bottom of the hour and talk about that a little bit, because it's really an important case. You know, you're talking about social media. The whole TikTok controversy erupted last week, and I think maybe people have begun to reconsider that and think, well, a lot of things have to happen. The Senate has to pass the bill. No one has to buy TikTok. You know, if someone has to fail to buy TikTok, I'm not sure that's all going to roll out into Hannah going into great despondency and me having to give her large quantities of IV Prozac during the program should TikTok fail.
I mean, you can follow me in the meantime, producer_Hannah.
Oh, look at this. Shameless self-promotion on TikTok by Hannah.
Bump her numbers up for her, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's the name of the game. Yes.
What are your numbers up to now? I know you gained quite a few last week.
Oh, yeah, I broke the 300 mark, so I was happy with that.
That's great. Oh, and Brian Hauswirth will be reporting on some news. He's got the story about the Nashville police finding a bank card from that student who disappeared after stumbling out of a bar, out of Luke Bryan's bar. Hasn't been found. There was a report of a body floating in the Cumberland River, but it turned out not to match Riley Strain's. So that was good. Heard that this morning on the way.
Well, not good.
Well, no, it's good that it didn't match his.
But someone else is dead.
Well, no, that's bad. But it's good that he still could be alive. That's what I meant.
Okay.
You don't think so?
I think it's not looking good.
Well, maybe he's dating Kate Middleton.
There you go.
So is there was it someone over in the Royals talked about the Kate Middleton thing over the weekend? Was it the Prince's brother, or there was someone talked about it? Did you hear any update in the news? I heard about it, and it floated out of my mind very quickly.
Did I hear any update in the news, or did I hear any update on the internet? Because those are two very different things. Even just this morning, I sent Stephanie another wild conspiracy theory about the whole thing. So the conspiracy theories are evolving rapidly, and it's great.
I don't think there's anything there. Do you really? I don't think so. John?
The latest conspiracy theory that I'm hearing is that King Charles is actually dead.
Yes.
And that
he died yesterday. That's what people are saying. And this is all rumor, by the way.
Yeah. And that the palace is kind of letting Kate Middleton take the fall in a way to kind of deflect attention away from the king while they figure out all of the transition of power stuff.
No, not with his diagnosis. If he had prostate cancer, that would be extremely unlikely to lead to a rapid demise after diagnosis. Extremely.
Yeah, but
just doesn't make any sense.
The last photos of him that were taken, he did not look good, and his hands were bright purple.
He has weird hands anyway, but how likely is it that you have a 2-week abdominal surgery or not abdominal surgery and have to end up in the hospital for 2 weeks? I mean, weird stuff. Weird things happen with the Royals.
Makes zero sense.
And I love all the memes about, the Netflix show The Crown that is fictional, quote, that the royal family hates. They, wrapped up production of that show. And I bet the producers are kicking themselves right about now because they could have covered all of this mess in another season, but they canceled the show.
Well, that'll teach them.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's all speculation. It's all just entertainment. Sure. It might as well be a dark Hallmark movie. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Speaking of which, I watched 2 Hallmark movies over the greater parts of those this weekend. Do I get a Good Husband award?
No.
No?
Actually, I think that channel's pretty good.
I like that channel.
I like it.
I kid my wife about it.
Especially, it's, and they actually have some decent movies on there. Some of them are more of the love angle, but sometimes they're uplifting. I think
I like the production values of it.
Yeah.
I think
they're uplifting.
They're uplifting, and we need a little positive news. I mean, we got Kate Middleton dying of something, and Prince Charles is always dead, and we have people in Nashville, sadly, can't find their body. I mean, bank cards. It's just lies, and more lies on the J6 committee. That's another story. I don't even know where to start. My ADD is raging this morning. That's another thing. Last week, we didn't even get to talk much about that. Some of the newly uncovered documents that the J6 committee was trying to suppress, and they handed them over to the people looking into this in the House, and they didn't give them the passwords. I mean, it's like a bunch of kids up there. It's just all
and
the
don't
negative
forget
news.
There's a budget deadline coming.
Well, you said last week or week before, whatever. They're going to pass it. It won't be a big deal.
And even if they have a shutdown, folks who've been through this, let's make it very clear that the core functions of government, you're going to get your Social Security checks.
Until 2032.
Well, that's true. But the point of the matter is that, I hear these media people say the government's going to shut down. We've seen this before. And they always come to an agreement, almost inevitably. So we'll see. We'll
have to see what happens. Now, Brian, would you like to, your lead story here on the stack you gave us this morning is about this Nashville investigation into 22-year-old Riley Strain. What's the latest?
Latest on that is that, and I've got potentially 3 or 4 leads because we've just got so much news this morning, but on that particular story yesterday, and I keep an eye on Metro Nashville Twitter, and it was right in the middle of one of the, Illinois is playing Wisconsin basketball. I had the game on the monitor because I was watching the wait to see on the tournament, and Metro Nashville police have been very tight-lipped. They put out a very short statement yesterday on Twitter and Facebook saying that his bank card was found on an embankment yesterday between Gay Street and Cumberland River.
An embankment.
What was not said in that particular post, and I linked to it in our story, is it was TikTokers that found the bank card. Now, if you look at the...
You're welcome.
Yeah.
They are sleuths though, and they've helped in other crime situations.
Give them all the credit, and the bottom line, if you look at the, it's hard to say. Riley's family's all there, but if you look at the comments on Metro Nashville Police Department, people have theories on what happened. I'll let you, the listener, if you want to go there. I'm not going to speculate, but people really feel they're calling. Why didn't you call in the FBI? Why didn't you call Tennessee Bureau of Investigation? We'll see what happens. They have said all along foul play was not suspected. It's a missing person report. This is concerning, to say the least.
Yeah.
And he has still not been found. They've been searching by boat. They've used dive teams. They've had canines. They are looking for him as we speak right now. He has not been found, but they found his bank card. I should also point out something here more locally, but it's a very sad story. Rockbridge finished 4th. That's not so sad. Or finished 3rd, I should say, but they got beat Friday in the semifinal game by the Incarnate Word Red Knights. Won there, by the way, state championship, 131 straight wins. Their coach, I confirmed with MU Healthcare, Dan Rolfus is their coach. I've heard different media outlets call him a different name. I know him. I know the team. It's Rolfus. That's what he is. He's a legendary coach. That's how his name is pronounced. He is in critical condition, Randy, this morning. He had a medical emergency after leaving Mizzou Arena. I'm not going to get into all the details other than to say that the school posted. He is in critical condition this morning at University Hospital, and I've linked to all the comments and all the rival schools that he and his team have beaten along the way. They're tweeting their condolences, but he's basically fighting for his life.
This is Rockbridge?
This is Incarnate Word.
Oh, Incarnate Word.
Their coach,
Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt filed the original lawsuit when he was an attorney general. He joins us now. Senator, great to see you. Why should people care about what's happening today? How will it affect all of us?
Well, it's the most important free speech case in our lifetime because it involves some of the highest ranking government officials in our country colluding and coercing with some of the biggest social media companies in the world to suppress millions of posts related to the Hunter Biden laptop story, the origins of COVID, the lab leak, efficacy of masks, and much more.
Well, there's Eric Schmitt, and here's Stephanie Bell on the Daily DC Rundown.
Eric Schmitt has been all over the TV this weekend promoting that case, as has Attorney General Andrew Bailey. Him and his staff are there right now. Big case. I don't know if I agree with Schmitt that it's the most important case. You know, certainly for him, it's a big day and a case that he has been working on for a very long time. So if you can catch the audio of these arguments. If you do, you might get way down into the weeds because I think there are some procedural issues beyond just the merits. The government is arguing essentially, so it was Missouri and Louisiana who came together to originally file this suit. They've also got a bunch of individual plaintiffs in the lawsuit that say that their posts were either suppressed or blocked. But the government is essentially arguing they don't have standing. You hear this a lot. It's basically whether or not you have the harm to bring suit, right? And so they're saying the states aren't really harmed because these were individual posts. And I think the government's argument is the federal government's argument is that there's no right to listen. There's free speech, but the state doesn't have some sort of right to hear other people's free speech. And so the state's pushing back on that. And then as far as the individuals, there are arguments that they don't have standing either. I think they're going to withstand that standing threshold. But if you remember when this was, I believe, down at the Fifth Circuit, we won. Missouri won, right? And so that's the best place to be on appeal is as the winner in the underlying case. And the court agreed.
When you say the standing threshold, that means do they have the right to bring the suit, right?
Correct.
Because the state, Eric Schmitt wasn't injured. I mean, the state wasn't injured. You have to have an injury.
Yeah, and you hear a lot about this. We heard a lot about standing in like the Mohila suit, if you recall, and Mohila was uniquely positioned in the student loan case to bring suit whereas some other states generally they said weren't. So we might hear a lot about that today. But obviously, a lot of people are hoping we get to the merits and really get some definitions around how much can the government talk to private companies and how that interacts with the First Amendment.
Well, they were doing an end around, right? I mean, were they colluding to do an end around the Constitution to infringe on people's First Amendment rights? Okay.
Yep, and that will be before the court. Of course, we typically don't get a lot of decisions until the end of June, so it might be a while on that one. But we did get a decision out of SCOTUS on Friday, and that was about social media blocking. And that's something that we've talked about here in Missouri before. If you recall, we've got Representative Reisch on before, but she was at one time involved in a pretty big deal lawsuit over her blocking someone on Twitter. And what the court said on Friday. And so I tried to tag her when we did our little show thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, she's not on Twitter because she just said, to heck with it. I'm just going to not be on Twitter. But what the court said on Friday was that public officials can be held liable for blocking critics on social media. So they shouldn't be blocking people. But there's kind of a caveat in that if it's your official social media. So a lot of times, and I think in Missouri, it's become pretty standard practice that you've got people's official Twitter, their campaign Twitter, their personal Twitter, or social, whatever you want to say.
So they're protected under certain circumstances.
They
right?
are, but on the official one, you really can't be blocking people, is what the court said. So we've got the budget deadline coming up on Friday. It kind of hit a snafu over the weekend. Negotiations really broke down.
the roundabout, and of course we'll get an update on roll carts and how that is being rolled out, because that's on the top of everyone's list of important priorities. And Cheri Toalson Reisch with an important announcement at 8:10. She will unveil whatever it is that she's up to after her term is over here this session. Just a few short weeks, less than a couple months now. So this Haitian thing is going to turn into, I think, and highlight the immigration crisis. And it's becoming a national security concern among those who have to brace for it. Haitian gangs have so far killed over 3,700 people, control over 80% of the nation's capital. I mentioned that one of the leader is the so-called barbecue gang, where he likes to burn people alive in their house. And at least one video purported to show him eating flesh off of a burn victim. Like Hannah said, you don't know what you see on social media is true or not. But,
I would hope it's not true, but stranger things have happened.
I wouldn't put it past what's going on down there. These people are out of control. So without stabilizing the national security and Haiti's security environment, no one's there to stabilize it. It's a disaster. Governor Ron DeSantis is bracing. He's sending out more coastal patrols. He's mobilizing troops to be at various entry points for maritime refugees. But the big concern is we've already seen a lot of action around illegal immigrants that come in as a result of President Biden's so-called parole plan, where he uses what used to be what is designed to be a parole protocol for individuals from certain countries who then can come in and be paroled in their immigration status, which is different than coming in through the normal immigration means. And they are essentially given, I guess, if you want to say it in another way, asylum directly. But Biden has named several countries, including Haiti, as one of those that people can come in. Well, perhaps you saw this story of the so-called parolee who raped a 15-year-old up in Massachusetts. Where did that parolee come from? Haiti. A 15-year-old disabled girl was allegedly reported. Now, this is per Bill Malugin at Fox News. Can we and Griff Jenkins? Can we assume that that's legitimate, Producer Hannah?
Yeah, I think so.
The Haitian man arrested for raping a 15-year-old disabled girl at a migrant hotel in Massachusetts. This was Wednesday. Came to the U.S. via Biden administration's parole program for Haitians. We've talked about this with the Center for Immigration Studies. Mark Krikorian talked about that with us just a couple of weeks ago. It allowed him to fly into JFK Airport in New York City direct from Haiti last summer with a 2-year parole grant. ICE has now filed a detainer on this 26-year-old with local authorities. This parole program allows up to 30,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and, wait for it, Venezuelans to fly into the U.S. after they've supposedly been vetted and have a sponsor in the U.S. They receive 2-year, quote, humanitarian parole grants, which allow them to apply for work authorization, live in the U.S. They basically are welcome into the party. It's like having a green card. And unlike previous migration waves where families came in, you're seeing more and more of these basically able-bodied male young men in their 20s that are coming in. Some of them may be looking for work. I'm not saying that, but we've seen the girl down in Athens, Georgia. We saw the Venezuelan woman who drove into this young man, Travis, near Hazelwood, up in Hazelwood in St. Louis. As far as I've heard, that young man is still, a 12-year-old is still on life support. It's just, no, he died. That's right, he died.
Yeah, when I was in Dallas and I saw all the people with the envelopes coming in or whatever, it was all like, I would say mid-20s, really young, able-bodied folks. I think it was definitely more men than it was women, and they all appeared to not know one another. No family relationship, it didn't appear.
What size was that group?
There were maybe 6 to 8 people.
Yeah. Just sort of wandering around. Or was there someone leading them? Was it an NGO? Did you have any sense of that?
They were definitely asking the staff or trying to ask questions. They were very confused about where they were supposed to be, and but they didn't appear to be like working together. They all were holding an envelope and kind of like, now what? And so they've appeared very confused.
And the reports have been that they go through TS. They can bypass TSA, right? I mean, they don't have to go through the right. That's what I've heard.
They were arriving into Dallas.
No, that's that mass parole program. Dan Patrick is talking about it right now on Fox News. I didn't know he was going to do that, but he's, of course, the lieutenant governor of Texas. This is, again, going to, and I'm thankful for that. I mean, I'm not thankful that bad things are going to happen to innocent people. They already have. But I'm glad that these episodes are going to highlight the disaster that Joe Biden's immigration program is for this country. I mean, it's preposterous. And how long is it going to be before we're reporting on some heinous crime in Missouri? In mid-Missouri. It's going to happen, right?
Remember back to the days of the Marielitos during initially it was the Carter administration, and Castro pretty much emptied his prisons out, loaded them up on boats, and sent them to Florida. And it was the same kind of deal.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I remember that. And sometimes those boats themselves were overloaded and capsized. Remember that? And they required heroic rescues. And sometimes the rescues weren't there. It failed. It's just crazy. I don't understand. But it's good that the issue is being brought up, and I'm glad that at least Florida is going to be a main point of entry, a temp for these people, unless they fly direct, and maybe they'll fly directly into JFK. I don't know. But Biden will probably try to bypass DeSantis. But DeSantis is going to make an issue out of this, and I'm glad he does. On other news, guess what I did yesterday?
What?
What did you cut down with your chainsaw?
No, there is nothing. I mean, very few things in this world like the smell of freshly mown grass. I mowed my grass yesterday. It was a beautiful thing. I look forward to that. It smells good. It's beautiful. And
come mow mine next. You like the smell of it.
This is who mows my grass. Salter.
Salter.
It's been a long time since I mowed the grass.
No, I was happy because I had juiced up the mowers, the push mower and the lawn and the rider with the stabilized and everything. Everything was good. It all started up. Kept my battery on a little tender for the first time in years. Everything started. The weed whipper started. It was a beautiful day when things work. It's just a beautiful day.
Meanwhile, my husband is about to throw in the towel on his battle with our little push mower.
What's the matter?
He's tried several things to get it to start up, and every time he fixes one thing, he discovers another thing. And we're having the conversation of, do we have to get a new mower, or do we keep trying to fix it?
Aren't you renting?
Yeah.
Shouldn't someone else be mowing your lawn?
No.
I thought that's not part of the deal.
Tell them put a kit in the carburetor. That's always my first fix on the push mower.
That's not really a thing in small towns. I don't know.
Tim texts us, I love mowing grass. And I don't know, you know what I love about it? I can put on my AirPods and just listen to my whatever podcast. I can catch up on the news. It's just one of those beautiful things. It's a lot of incoming data while you mow the grass. Although a lot of sticks to pick up after the storms and the weather, that's always the first mowing is always rough. And it's always that debate as you get further along, on and off the mower. Do you start John, do you go through this? I know everyone out there goes through this. The diameter of the twig that you will roll over with your mower, that tolerable threshold increases as the mowing experience goes on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh, man, that's about the size of a little finger. Yeah. I better pick it up. And then you end up about the size of your wrist, and it's like, man, that's right. We got this.
And all the time you're thinking, well, no problem. I'll sharpen the blades. Nah, it doesn't happen. Doesn't happen because the mowing season's on. And what's with the moles? I mowed more molehills than I did grass.
Oh, man, they're terrible again this year. You don't get a cold winter, doesn't kill the grubs. They got plenty of stuff to eat, so they're happy little campers.
I understand. I've got some stuff that I don't have enough to cover the lawn, but I'm going to buy some more. It kills the grubs, apparently. I've got to spread some of that stuff on there because it is driving me crazy. These big mounds, and then it just turns into bald spots on your lawn. Not good. Maybe someone has a cure for that because I don't.
Mole cats.
Mole cats. Ah.
I have a mole cat that does a fine job.
Does a good job? Brings them to you? Or eats them?
Pretty much. No, they leave them right there where you can step on them.
All right. Well, I don't know. I felt good. It sort of got the season going. And now I'm waiting for the wind to die down, and I can go to town with all of the weeds that are starting to come up with my Weed Be Gone sprayer. It's a beautiful thing. Lewis says it was parking garage. ABC 17 News.
On Hitt Street.
On Hitt Street, our...
That's campus, for those of you who are... that's where I parked going to law school.
I used to park in a parking lot that was near this garage, and used to hate walking by it in the dark because just give you the creeps a little bit.
Saturday's report, according to Christian Bassey, says the body was discovered by a university security guard. At that time, they said no foul play was suspected. Have you seen any news reports to the contrary?
I haven't seen news reports, but I've seen what someone claimed was a firsthand report from Facebook that it was somebody that jumped. And it seems consistent with the story in just that they said there's no foul play and there's a dead body next to a parking garage. But news outlets have not confirmed that yet.
Well, and this specific parking garage is one that
is known for that.
Yes.
That's not the one that they spent $800,000 putting walls up. That's the one down there by the loft or whatever.
Yeah, that's a city parking garage. This is a Mizzou parking garage,
this is Mizzou,
I think.
Yeah,
they said ABC 17 reported that a witness had said it appeared to be a middle-aged man.
Oh, man.
As opposed to, thought might be somebody young like a student.
Middle-aged men are committing suicide. The biphasic curve of suicides is in young people, adolescents and young people, and then men over 50. I don't know how old this guy was, or gal, or whatever. A man, you said, a guy. But, you can make all kind of speculation about where the culture is and what's happening and what's leading to that kind of despondence, which leads to this level. It's a shame. And the Noodles and Company fire...
I think it was a total loss.
Yeah, it seems like they're done for a long time. This wasn't just a little kitchen fire and get out the fire extinguisher. This was a big deal. So now, is that the same outfit as over on Broadway? Next to the Sam's and the Hy-Vee and all there in that shopping mall?
I don't know.
I wonder if that's the same Noodles.
It's always scary when something like that happens in like downtown because there's just so many other buildings close by, And
it could easily affect other businesses.
Right.
And as windy as it was, we're lucky it didn't jump. So kudos to firefighters that kept it contained.
Yeah, the fact that it was contained is
I mean, the wind was whipping around just wickedly all weekend.
Speaking of fires affecting local restaurants,
yeah.
John, any update on Red Lobster in Jefferson City?
We haven't checked back with them recently, but it's almost becoming like the Brian gag with Golden Corral.
Oh, yeah.
I presume they're back open, but I couldn't say for sure.
I would like to get some listeners to weigh in on what their friends and what the people in their schools and what the people that are around them, what they're doing with measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. I'm just curious because, there's been a real siege on vaccination of all types, and we've seen decreased vaccination rates actually since Andrew Wakefield, the now discredited researcher and defrocked physician. I mean, his license was taken away over in the UK in a very prestigious journal published in 1998 that there was a connection between autism and the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella. That has contributed to spikes and little outbreaks of measles, but now the latest culprit is these immigrants coming in. Big spike in Chicago and other places.
I know. I'm sitting here when you first told me about this story this morning. I'm like, I thought we eradicated measles a long time ago.
Far from it. It's making a comeback. And measles deaths worldwide have jumped 40% last year, according to health agencies. It affects, of course, youngsters. Sickened 9 million children, killed 136,000, mostly in poorer countries. But it can be a fatal disease. And the thing is, after a child recovers from measles, they can then years later get something called subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. It can be deadly.
Say that
SSPE.
5 times fast.
That can be deadly. And, it's one of these things where, there is, with every vaccine, there's a risk of either an immediate annoying reaction with fever and local pain where the injection went in or flu-like symptoms, whatever. But, I mean, when you're talking about these kinds of illnesses, and it can affect moms who get infected with measles while the baby is developing. The baby can become very small birth weight, premature birth, big deal there. So it's when
I first had kids, I was a crunchy or granola mom, as we've talked about a bit, and we looked at alternative vaccine schedules. I think part of, and I did a lot of reading, and a lot of it is, you look at how many more vaccines kids get these days than they used to, and it'll freak you out, as a parent. It's a lot. And I wish, basically it came down to we weren't going to be able to send our kid to daycare or school without just doing the vaccine thing. And there wasn't really, and healthcare providers in Mid-Mo don't offer very many differing schedules or any flexibility to parents. Yeah. So we basically were forced into it. But I wasn't happy about it. I'll say that.
They've been given
Well, I guess 2 members, the owner of the Cardinals and myself, and I'm officially resigning, so there's down to 1.
You got quite fired up over the renewal of Ollie's contract. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, look, I actually am so fired up. I came down here to Jupiter to scout the situation for myself. I figured I'd be the Wake Up Missouri correspondent down here in Jupiter, Florida this week. Look, I mean, the Cardinals are the greatest franchise in the history of organized sport. The crown jewel of the National League, 11-time world champions. Last year he came in last. Randy, last. He came in last place. And you know what they did? Do you know what they did? Instead of in Samurai days, we know what he would have done. He came in last, and then they give him a contract extension after coming in last place. That's bad. Worse than the Cubs, last place, and they give him an extension. It's just the reason St. Louis is having such hard times is the rewarding of failure. It's that communism attitude. I watched on Twitter. They play soccer over there. I guess they have in Beijing and other communist places. and the people were bragging about watching a 3-3 tie. And I'm like, see, that's what when you take the greatest job. I mean, truly the leader of the free world, the biggest job in the Western Hemisphere, and the manager of the Cardinals, and you reward failure. I don't get it. You explain it. Help me, Randy. Please.
He had a pretty good first season. He had a pretty good first season with the Redbirds.
Did you watch game 1 of the playoffs of that season when he pulled Carolina in the 6th?
Phillies, we know.
Whoa.
He didn't have a good season. You know you can have a good season. There's been 11 good seasons in Cardinal history. It ends with a ring. John. Ends with a ring. He didn't have a good season. And last year he came in last, John. Do you know could you hire a team of engineers to find out how to do worse than last?
Okay, well, Scott, I
feel like we need to take some deep breaths.
Scott, would you have been okay with a 1-year renewal to give him a chance to turn it around? I think everyone would admit he was trying to make a bit of a silk purse out of a sow's ear last year in terms of the roster, right? So you want to give him another chance? Just 1 year, at least?
He had the job this year. You didn't need to extend him. Trust me. Was there a line of teams lining up to sign Ollie freaking Marmol? No. No one would have even interviewed him. No one would have gave him this job. No one was dying to get the last place manager. No, not even the 4th place manager. There was no reason to re-sign him. None. He needed to feel urgency. He needed to feel like his job he was about to be fired because he should have been fired. That's why he should feel that way.
All right.
So, I know, Stephanie, you've just never loved anything. That's why you don't understand, Stephanie.
The cool, calm, and collected persona of Stephanie Bell will bring some more gravitas here to this discussion.
Until she hits you with a text message that is nothing but a question mark.
Cold-hearted. I hate puppies.
Stephanie should be happy.
They
passed a school bill in the state Senate last week.
Yeah. Not a very good one, honestly. They did make some progress. I guess, what are we going to get? I mean, everyone's on spring break. Are we going to get any news this week as far as the campaign goes, as far as, what we should expect the rest of the legislature? Are people actually on vacation? Are they out campaigning? What should we expect from this week?
Oh, I mean, I think, the folks that have races are out campaigning. It looks like you're going to break a little news here on Wake Up in Missouri today about some things. I think that this week will be a relatively quiet week as far as the legislature and campaigning. I mean, look, the Senate, who has a hard time doing anything, just accomplished, what I thought was a pretty big bill. I mean, it was a compromise. There's no doubt. They all worked together and came up with something that I think most folks I know are pretty stoked about the ability to compromise and come together. And essentially what happened was the charter school folks bought off the public schools. I mean, they shoved $400 and something million into the foundation formula, and they expanded the ESA program. And frankly, most folks I talked to thought it was a pretty fair compromise. It moved the chains closer to school choice. Actually, give more people school choice. But the big news is Caleb Rowden, after his long odyssey, finally got some charter school stuff in Columbia. I really think Caleb will look back at probably his biggest accomplishment in what, in my opinion, Caleb Brown is the most accomplished conservative legislator probably in the history of the Missouri Republican Party. He'll look back on this as his biggest accomplishment. He's wanted to get that school the whole time. I don't know what they did to him, but they ticked him off, and he has been on a mission, and he got it. He got it to the Senate. It's not done. This is a pretty complicated piece of legislation. But I think he'll probably view that as the capstone of his legislative career.
Scott, we appreciate you joining us live. I'd point out, yes, that was a huge big deal for the Republicans of the Senate, specifically Rowden, and he has been criticized by the superintendent, as you know from our newscasts, Dr. Yearwood, for that bill, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that.
Something tells me Caleb ain't losing any sleep about being criticized by the Columbia superintendent.
No, he's not.
I also think that superintendent's caught some criticism from Caleb.
Yes, Caleb fired right back. Senator Rowden fired right back at him Friday. In fact, called his comments ludicrous here on this show. Scott, I'm going to direct you to a story. I've got it up. I encourage people to look at it, 939theeagle.com, kws.com. And I linked to the testimony, folks. I really want you to read the testimony. It's 30 pages, pretty short to read, but it has to do with the Public Service Commission and Grain Belt. Scott, the bill is from a guy you know very well.
You're the only person I know that thinks 30 pages is not much to read.
It's not much to read. It's not. It's a pretty short read. Mike Hafner is the bill sponsor, and basically he wants to expand, Scott, the PSC from 5 to 7, says we need to have 2 members of people who have engaged in farming on there. He's not happy with them over Grain Belt. Does that bill have a chance to pass this year?
No, and I'll tell you why. The Missouri Republican Party needs to decide what it thinks about property rights. I loved what Mike Hafner's been doing on Grain Belt. I love how he's been fighting back and fighting against folks being able to take your property for private companies. But then they want to go back, and there's a landfill in Kansas City. They're following all the rules. They're going through the whole process. But then they want to change things, how they can put a landfill in, and basically pass a special state law to block them. So it's like, okay, you want property rights until you want to tell someone how to use their land. And it's just, I don't think you can do both, right? You could be you're for property rights for folks in North Missouri, but you're against property rights for folks in Cass County. It's I think the arguments are too. Mike Hafner's a very good legislator and an intelligent man, but that argument's probably too nuanced to make much sense to most people.
But Scott, I'd point out, and you know how powerful they are, the Missouri Farm Bureau, the Missouri Cattlemen's right here in Columbia, Missouri Corn Growers, they want this bill done. They want it passed.
Now, next year, I think it's a very, very possible thing. We'll be talking about that as one of the top 5 bills going into the next session.
Got it.
This year, man, I really just don't know how you get that bill through this state Senate. I just say there's so many landmines out there. None of them are particularly ideological. It's all personal.
Yep.
But I think that's if Mike Hafner is a state senator, totally different situation. I would say probably 50-50 chance of passing some version of that. This year, I think that's a tall order to get through this state Senate. I'm not sure you didn't see the last major piece of legislation pass last week.
Oh, wow. Okay, because you think it'll all be focused on budget after this?
No, I think they'll be focused on whining and complaining and petty arguments and the budget.
I understand. I understand you've been lobbying for some kind of a mandatory Prius quota for government vehicles in Missouri. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, I'd like to set that number at 0. That would be a great quota.
All right.
I think you're going to find, like, the education bill, if I had to guess, like to come back to the Senate. House will make some changes. You have IP reform. You have lots of folks needing attention. They're running for office. You have things like what Senator Coleman did. I mean, actually openly advocating for a PQ in the House.
Yeah, that was
bizarro. I just think you're going to see things like that pop up. Plus, you already do the budget. The House did their typical job of being irrelevant in the budget process again this year. I guess Lincoln will be 6-0. It looks like when this is over, as far as actually writing the budget. I think it's going to be a tall order to pass a whole bunch more huge, big-ticket items out of a chamber that, frankly, all hate each other.
That's Scott Faughn, uncharacteristically telling us what he really thinks this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Scott, Speaker Blocker was back before the ethics committee again last week with his lawyers.
What an idiotic process, huh?
Dave Steelman and Lowell Pearson, some big names are representing. Well, I guess the question to you, is he going to be there still at the end of session when the smoke clears?
Guys, I've been telling you since this popped up in October, I think this is an embarrassing political hit. I think if you look back on when the historians recap the famed 2024 lieutenant governor's race, I think this will be a big part of it. I think it's hurt Dean's ability to win that race. But yeah, I think he'll be there. I mean, I think that they have a lot of little small things, but they don't have anything significant. I think there's some, look, Dean should have got his expenses right. I think an honest person of any political stripe could rightfully criticize him for it. But I don't think they have. You have to resign stuff. And also, I tell you, the longer this goes on, it's almost like Fannie Willis. When you bring David Steelman in the room, that's a big dog. Lawyers are lawyers, and there's David Steelman. Would you want to be deposed by David freaking Steelman? Because I wouldn't.
He's a big guy, too.
And mean when he wants to be. There is no – I tell you what, I would hate to – I think you get a lot of rest as the pillow that night of the old boy getting deposed by David Steelman the next morning, because I don't think he'd even sleeping. I think the longer this goes on, it's become a comical joke. I mean, it really has. It's been 6 months. I think I researched you could actually conceive, carry, and birth a wombat faster than you can investigate this $4,000 of Dean Plocker's money. I think they've drug it out so long, I think on purpose, I think to tie him up. But they drug it out so long it's become a joke. And I think what's going to happen is almost like Fannie Willis in Atlanta. Now you're going to see people start to investigate the investigators. And I don't think they've done this in a way. I think you got a lawyer down there in the House who's got a real bone to pick with Dean, and a clerk, and some former staffers. And Dean did make some mistakes. I mean, this is at the end of the day his fault. But I don't think it's kick you out mistakes. Well, and I've been saying that from the beginning. We'll see if my little stein of knowledge served me well.
And Lord knows he sure has formidable and savvy counsel in Lowell Pearson, no doubt about that. Hey, Scott Faughn, thank you.
Lowell's a heck of a guy.
Lowell's a heck of a guy. Great, and a great patriot. When we come lost a little time getting him settled down. But we thank you for allowing us to run a little long with him. What's hot with Hannah?
Well, this came out last week, and we haven't really had a chance to cover it yet just because there's been so much going on in the news. But everyone's favorite influencer, Dylan Mulvaney. She is back in the headlines.
Whoa. What pronoun did you use?
I used she.
Oh, Hannah. Hannah.
Anyway, she has released a song that is called Days of Girlhood. And I will, since we don't have a lot of time here, I will spare the Wake Up fam from playing it here, but I will post it on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page if you want to go check it out. But it's getting a lot of criticism from especially women, which I think was the opposite intended effect of what Dylan was going for. Dylan has been accused in the past of treating being a woman like wearing a costume, right? And so the song highlights a lot of very stereotypical, quote, women problems. It talks a lot about retail therapy and one-night stand hookups and, like, kissing your friends. The music video is very... all of the actresses and actors in the music video are dressed in, like, old pinup style costumes and bikinis and just laying around the pool. And it's pretty cringy to me.
Anything Dylan Mulvaney does is pretty cringy to me.
Having a breakdown in the bathtub is one of the lyrics in the video. And I don't know. This stood out to me because typically when it comes to transgender things, for me, the topic of medical intervention with minors is separate from, an adult choosing to live however they feel fit. And using pronouns isn't a big deal to me as long as it's not real crazy. But this one stood out to me because it just, first off, the word girlhood really bothers me. Stephanie, I don't know about you, but Dylan's thing has always been, like, she'll start her videos with, it's day 374 of being a girl or whatever. And just the word girlhood really bothers me. I think it's just cringy.
How old is Dylan?
Let me look. Probably late 20s, if I had to guess.
Is it possible
27.
that true femininity is being held hostage to these caricatures that these drag queens and these transgenders portray? True femininity. We all know what true femininity looks like.
Well, and girlhood's weird when you're 27 because you're no longer a
Mrs. Mayor, for double booking last week and last month, and I apologize for you. It's the first mistake Hannah tells me I've made all year long. So
I don't think I said that.
I regret that it happened with your interview. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. You gave me an extra half hour in my morning, so I guess thank you for the gift.
Not like you don't have a lot going on. Hey, can you? Is there anything you'd like to update us on about the fire and the body that was found over the weekend by the Hitt Street Garage and the Noodles and Company? Any new news that we should know about?
Nothing new besides what the fire department has put out. I know the city manager, of course, updated council as soon as he found out about it. And then just obviously following the investigations to get feedback to us.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. And I hear it's extensive damage there. But, congratulations to...
I was going to say, also the quick response from our fire department and our first responders, always responding fast, and thankful for them.
Especially with the winds whipping around. We're so fortunate they were able to contain it and not have it spread to adjacent properties. That's really great news.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. As soon as I heard that, I was thinking about the Heidelberg immediately.
Yeah.
And thinking, no, not again.
I know. I just oh no, it's bad enough that one establishment is decimated.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Mayor Barbara Buffaloe joins us. So ahead of tonight's city council meeting, a lot of things on the agenda. Let's try to run through them. Before that, a roll cart rollout update. Anything that you'd like our listeners to hear?
Yes, I would love this opportunity. So, of course, we started this just 2 weeks ago, and we asked for an update at our city council meeting on March 4th because we had heard some feedback. We're like, how is it going? So just as a reminder, we're having our roll cart. We're having patience with our staff who are doing the collection. We are, a couple of our smaller trucks have not come in yet, and those are ones for our tighter neighborhoods. So if you see one of our manual collections happening, it's because the truck is not in yet for picking up the roll carts. We also have a couple of our larger trucks are also out with maintenance, and we expect them back soon. But I just wanted to say, in case people see a person out getting the bags out or manually moving the truck over, that's because of that reason. But for the most part, it's working pretty well around town.
Will there be smaller carts that will be able to negotiate those neighborhoods? Smaller trucks, I'm sorry. Smaller trucks. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So those are on order, and they should be here April 1st, or at least the first part of April, and then you'll see those out there.
Mayor, we appreciate you joining us. I'd just point out to Randy's question, Nick Foster, who's the 4th Ward councilman, actually updated about 100 business leaders and elected officials. I was in the meeting, the Ready Board meeting on Wednesday, and he said flat out that the biggest compliment he gets is about roll carts. The room erupted in cheers. Great. I mean, everybody, they did. They literally, loud applause for him when he said that. Mayor, I want to ask you about an issue coming up tonight, and I know it's something that I've been reporting on and off for several years. It is a proposed roundabout at Fairview in Chapel Hill. Now, it was approved by voters back in 2015, part of the capital improvement sales tax extension. It's about $1.2 million. The funding is there, but there is some opposition from neighbors who don't like the roundabout. What do you see happening tonight, Mayor?
Okay, Brian, and don't let me forget also to say that curbside recycling has started up this week too, but at the side.
Yes.
I have to point out, high five for actually reporting on this, because I saw in other local news no one mentioned this. You can just tell who's been around and who hasn't.
Well, I appreciate that.
To know that the roundabout at Fairview and Chapel Hill is a thing.
Yep.
So what we have going on tonight is a proposed roundabout, like you said. It was on our 2015 capital improvement tax. And the plan is to help that intersection where we see a lot of cars kind of, especially at peak hours, going all the way down the hill of Chapel Hill, going towards Forum. Mm-hmm. We also know that there's, daycares nearby, there's subdivisions nearby. There's been a lot of public improvement discussion around this. I will say it reminded me a lot of the Forum and Green Meadows roundabout. Mm-hmm. If you remember when that was proposed, we had a lot of people around the area like, this will never work. What are we going to do? So I went back to the 2016 public comments on this and reached out to the people who were against that roundabout and asked them if I could find their contact information, and asked what are their thoughts now that it has been built. And so I'm hearing back it's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And so I just wanted to say, when we're thinking about these decisions that we're making today, we're thinking about as we continue to have growth, especially in the Southwest area, what are we going to do to help plan for that additional traffic we're going to see? And so this is one of those examples that we have our professional engineers on staff that have proposed a solution for a safer intersection. And so we're trying to work with our neighbors to see what accommodations can we put to help, get rid of some of their fears.
Very good information, especially. I did not realize after reading the packet you'd contacted some of the opponents from 2016. So that's brand new. We appreciate that. You wanted to mention recycling.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to point out that our biweekly curbside recycling has started back up again. So you can go onto the city's website. You can look at your utility bill. You'll see which week you're on and which week you're off. And so for those who are out there, I know there's probably a cheer in a crowded room somewhere else that I'm just not hearing, Brian.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Mayor, thank you. Thank you for your time and your service.
Now, you talked about
thanks, Brian.
The growth of the city. We were getting a listener question in about a water tower and the amazing growth that the southwest corner of Columbia has seen. They said there was funding already in place, but that hasn't happened yet. What is being done? Because I know, just driving through that area, I feel like it gets bigger every day.
Yeah, right. Well, and I mean, we need more housing, so yay for that. We have been trying to procure property for the last 8 years to try to find a place to put a water tower. I will say there's nothing final that's come on for a vote for us yet, but we're in the final stages of negotiation for a potential site. And so then you will see, the water tower coming in. I think it gets a little tricky sometimes when people are driving in that area because they might see the Consolidated Water District water tower and wonder, why do we have an issue? Why do we have water pressure issues? And it's just because we have obviously two different water utilities providing water in the area. So just point that out.
All right, that's good. Finally, annexation. Little brouhaha over zoning and a little strip of annexation, and the headline in one of the reports is the Columbia continues its eastward expansion, march to the east. Tell us about that.
We're coming. Yeah, we're coming for you, Fulton. No, it's so this is a property that's off of Olivet Road, and we have seen tremendous growth and interesting growth in the Olivet Richmond area. Even last year, I think we annexed or approved a few different subdivisions in that area. And so there's obvious questions from the community members around that because, in some of those, they live in the one neighborhood. They had the same view that they expected out their back door, which is single-family homes on larger lots. And what's being proposed tonight is an annexation and a zoning from Agriculture 1, which is a county rating, into two tracts. One, which is R1 for single-family homes, and the other one is R2 that allows a little bit bigger of density, like the duplexes you might see in the old Faughn neighborhood, for instance. And so that's what's on tonight and what the discussion is.
Okay, is that now? I read into that a little bit into the weeds, and I think what I read was that a large majority of surrounding homeowners in that proposed, R2 zoning designation objected to it. And what was mentioned in the report was multi-family housing. Is that limited to duplexes, or could it be a big apartment building?
So it cannot be. In fact, the applicant had originally requested RMF, which is the multifamily, and then after the planning and zoning, they changed it to have R1 and R2. And R2 just limits you to two on a lot.
Okay.
So it's like a duplex. Now, I will say, the ones that we received across the street, they're in the county, and I think there's that kind of conversation about we live in the county, this is what we expect to have on us. And so for me, it's that balance of needing for additional housing, thinking about how a neighborhood, their character and their patterns of the neighborhood, and how do we respect that? Yeah. On this request we have on our meeting, it's really just about the annexation and zoning. They have no plans to develop it, and so it might even change whoever buys this property. It might even change to just R1 or something else. We don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's good to clarify some of those details because it is important. And I am sympathetic to folks who feel like they don't have any control over the issue. And we'll have to see. What is the process by which this happens tonight now? Is there going to be public comment? What happens?
Yep. Yeah, so on anything that's under public hearing and old business, new business, everything, a lot of people can come in and have comments on. So I expect to see some of the neighboring properties out. They've also obviously contacted city council members or the staff to give their feedback. You know, one thing I'll also point out that I've asked on these areas before, sorry about the truck noise, that I've asked around these areas is, as the city continues to grow, how can we work better with our county partners on making sure that we have the road infrastructure in place for this additional cars that we're going to see? And so some of those roads are on our long-range transportation plan, like Richland, but other roads like Olivet hadn't really been in our vision. And so how do we stay ahead of this, but not too far ahead that we're building roads to nowhere? So it's this delicate balance, and I'm thankful to the county for meeting with me and talking through what our options are.
All right. Finally, I know one of your BFFs is Mike Murphy. He's your buddy. And Mike reported in Como Buzz that city's electric rate increases hit 30% for small ratepayers. Your thoughts about that, and how in these economic times when people are taking out 2 bags of groceries for what they used to get 4 bags of groceries for, and bearing this. Any thoughts about that? Comments?
I haven't looked into the blog. The one thing I will say is that, when we go through some of these changes, I'm a small rate user. It depends on the tier. It depends on the day. And I know for me, one of the things when we were looking at our electrical rates, it was balancing the cost of the system. So regardless of how much you use, we still have cost to our electric utility. The pipes, the wires, the poles, all of those things go into how our rates are calculated. And then for those that are suffering hardships, we have programs. And one of the best programs I think we have is programs where we work with partners to actually put in energy efficiency, like improvements to the home, so that you pay less regardless of what the rate is.
Okay. Well, I think it is of concern to small users because it appears to potentially inordinately impact them. So many of them may be knocking at your doors from assistance. Thank you, Mayor Buffaloe. Look forward to talking to you next month.
I will not be in such a loud place. Thanks, Randy.
All right. Take care. There she is, Mayor Barbara Buffaloe. Lots going on, so you'll want to attend the council meeting tonight.
Simply, I punched the moose in the nose and he went away. Soon after, Dallas Seavey and his dogs came upon the moose, maybe the same one that was threatening and belligerent. When the moose got in his face and tangled with his dogs, Seavey said, quote, I dispensed with heroics and shot him. As per the Iditarod rules, he had to stop for 10 minutes, field dress the moose, but was later assessed a 2-hour penalty because the animal was not sufficiently gutted by the musher. Then the third guy, Wally Robinson, came down the trail full speed in the dark and, of course, ran into the moose carcass. Marshals confirmed that we are making sure that every attempt is made to utilize and salvage the moose meat. In fact, we may feed it to the losers.
Ooh.
So we heard him comment, hey, Rock, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. And now you know the rest of that story.
Where's Dudley Do-Right, the Canadian mounted policeman that we need?
There you go. Professor Peach Fuzz.
There you go. I wonder what moose tastes like. I don't know that I've had moose.
Moose is supposed to be pretty good.
Doesn't taste like chicken?
No, it tastes like moose.
You know, speaking of fun animal stories, I don't know whether you've seen this, and I don't think it's anything terribly new because this is the second time I've seen it in the past several months. Have you seen the very touching video of a little baby? You don't know what it is at first. It's sort of hard to tell, but at the base of the trunk of a tree, and there's this, I saw it on Twitter, and there's this naturalist or whoever was being filmed picks up clearly it was a little baby something. Turns out to be a three-toed sloth and can't crawl up the tree and has fallen down the tree. Well, the caretaker picks this little one up and hands it to the mama, who hugs the little infant and then reaches her hand out. And I don't know whether it was just a reflexive gesture because they were looking at some ant on the floor that they wanted to get or some, and there was this touching moment when the guy that rescues the little baby grabs the hand and just holds the hand of the sloth for a little while. It was the darndest thing. It was just, and the sloth sort of looks very thankfully and very showing a lot of gratitude. I mean, you'd like to anthropomorphize this three-toed sloth. That's what I did anyway, but it was sure touching to see. Have you seen that, Hannah?
I haven't.
I got to get that for you. It was really, really touching. Very, very touching moment. Coming up, we're going to be talking in a little bit with Cheri Toalson Reisch. She's actually made an announcement this morning, and she'll reprise us where she's going to be running for commissioner at Boone County. So we'll be talking with her about that and other sundry things. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was sure disappointed that we didn't have a little more forceful answer from Mayor Buffaloe on those utility rates. I certainly was getting some on the DM and on. I don't think have we had any on the text line yet? People are upset with that. 30% for a small utility electric user is a tough row to hoe. But I guess they do have to pay for the cost of it, right? So what are you going to do?
And Columbia has their own in-house utility that kind of factors into all that.
And Mike in his story mentioned
in mid-Missouri.
It is. It's a cool one, and but now you're going to be hot on the campaign trail, right? With your new pursuit. Tell us about it.
So I have made the decision. I'm announcing I'm going to be running for District 2, which is Northern County Commissioner, against a 12-year incumbent. And I think the time is right. I'm term limiting out in the House. And I've been in government for decades, and I'm just ready to continue service. I'm too young to retire and too full of energy and want to do the greater good for the greater number of people.
Representative, we appreciate you joining us. I just want to pass along, folks, before I have a question for Cheri, but a lot of people are going to be impacted this. Just got off the phone with Joint Communications. There is a wreck, folks, at Providence in Worley here in Columbia. I just talked to Joint Communications. 3 vehicles involved. We don't have any word on any injuries, if there are injuries, but it is partially blocked. So avoid that area. I just sent out a text alert for those of you who get the text alerts, and I'll have more details when that's available. But 3 cars involved. The road is partially blocked. Representative, I appreciate you joining us. So you're running for county commissioner. Janet Thompson is a very powerful. When I say powerful, she's pretty well known in the area and on the commission. A, can you beat her? And B, what are some of the issues you plan to raise in this race?
So she may be well known, but I'm also well known. Sure. I've got name and face recognition. I'm 7th generation Boone Countyan, and we've been here over 200 years. And I'm telling you, I can beat her. And I've won 50-50 district races before, and so I don't plan to lose. But my issues, I'm going to work with our competent sheriff. I think public safety is always a high priority, and I want to support him in any way I can and make sure he has the resources to keep Boone County safe. Another issue is I was around in the 90s when the county commission pushed a half-cent road tax, and they promised every gravel road in Boone County would be paved. Of course, that hasn't happened, and I understand the economy and, money just goes so far. But I do continue in the last 8 years as state rep to get complaints from constituents on different county issues, and they think I can solve them, which I can't. And so county government has to work within the parameters they're given under state statute because we are not a charter rural county.
All right. There's Cheri Toalson Reisch, who announces for Northern County Commissioner of Boone County, joining us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Representative, talk to us about your take on something that the neighboring county, Callaway's, been having a whole lot of negativity. People talking about plans to have solar farms, and I know it's been talked about a better reception, I guess, on the Boone County side. What have you heard from people out in the county in regard to that?
Well, we do have a large farm, I know, on the east side of Columbia, on the south side of I-70. They are popping up. I'm of the school of thought of all of the above. I want America to be energy independent again, gas, oil, wind, solar, everything. But I don't believe that any of it needs to be government subsidized. We're a capitalistic country, and, people need to win or fail on their own dime, not the taxpayers' dime. But one of the things I'm upset about with the county commission is the Senate Bill 190. I've been doing an initiative petition to freeze seniors' taxes since last fall. I'm getting closer to get the number required. So it will either be on the August or November ballot, but they came out in November against doing anything, drug their feet. At the end of February, decided last minute to put it on the April ballot, which I'm telling people, go ahead and vote yes. Send a message to them that you all want this. Our assessed value's gone up 16% in the last 3 years. But here's the thing. They didn't have to put it on the ballot. They could have made this decision. They're elected to do their job, and now they're costing taxpayers money. And also, April is a small turnout election. And those that do turn out are usually the liberal NEA types to try to get their school board members elected. So even if it fails or passes, I'm still going forward with mine. Theirs says certain. and they're going to hold public hearings. It's the Nancy Pelosi, let's pass the bill and then figure out what's in it. Mine is black and white. It will freeze across the board. It's optional. And these superintendents, they won't lose a dime. It's a scare tactic, scaremongering that the sky is falling in.
Now, you have had words about and made headlines before about the Columbia Public Schools. Last week, we kind of had a breakthrough where Brian got a comment from Dr. Yearwood about the recently passed education bill in the Senate. And Dr. Yearwood had serious concerns about what a charter school might do to Columbia Public Schools. Any comments in response to Dr. Yearwood?
Absolutely. I have filed the Columbia Charter bill for the last couple of years. I've gotten a House committee hearing. I was working with Senator Rowden and Senator Cindy O'Laughlin, and they told me that if they could get it to the Senate floor, they would get it passed. They got theirs out of the Senate before I did. Now, this is a massive education bill with education savings accounts and a bunch of other good stuff. For kids' education. But here's the thing. I think competition is good, and I think we need to put parents in the driver's seat of what's best for their children. Now, I'll just be honest. I was surprised. Mine was just with the parameter of the word Columbia, but what came out of the Senate uses the word Boone County. So I'm not fearful of anything happening to any of the schools in Boone County, but hypothetically, if some student outside of Columbia Public School boundaries would want to go to a charter school, I've always said in the last 8 years, we need to have it around I-70 in the north part of Columbia where the greatest need is.
Representative Cheri Toalson Reisch joins us this morning. Last week was the education bill in the Senate, moving over to the House. The initiative petition bill from the House to the Senate. Is there? Do you think, what is your odds maker's hat now say about the odds of either of those bills being on the governor's desk at the end of the session and any other legislation, or is it pretty much now reduced to those two and the budget?
So by Constitution, we must pass a balanced budget. So that's always the number one and priority, even if we get nothing else done. We are sitting at about a $50 billion proposed budget. I would love to see less government spending, and we are looking to do things like continue to lower income tax. There's a bill out there to eventually eliminate corporate tax. But here's the thing on IP reform. The Senate has sent us something, Mary Elizabeth Coleman's bill, but there were some good features stripped out of it. And so I and about 5 other representatives, most of us sit on the House Elections Committee. We've been working on IP reform for years. This should have been done 2-3 years ago, and it's ridiculous that we're waiting till the last minute to even think about getting something done. But here's what we are considering in the House. We need to put back into the Senate version, you must be a U.S. citizen, and there must not be any foreign monies coming into our Missouri elections. Now, my take on it is we must keep the legislature and the citizenry the same at 50% plus 1. And I think the biggest school of thought is just adding in a majority of the congressional districts, which would be 5 out of 8.
Okay,
so that's what the House will be looking at. And I think we'll be moving it quickly. Now, it will have to go back to the Senate because there's changes, and it will ultimately probably have to go to a conference committee to hash out any differences.
Do you sense that those differences will be irreconcilable, or do you think there can be a meeting of the minds?
So it's too soon to tell, but I hope they see it the House way. We need to get reform done. It's too easy to change our Constitution. We can't go back in without a vote of the people to even tweak it or make things better, whereas through the legislative route, even like this Senate Bill 190, we have a bill in the House and the Senate to improve it, make it more black and white, because there is some gray areas and questions in it. And so, we've seen all the marijuana and everything else that initiative petition can do. But my fear is, as a pro-life person, we will get abortion in our Constitution in November. And just because we put a question on the ballot in August doesn't mean it's going to pass or not pass. So, all I can do is pray and hope people's eyes will be opened.
Cheri, our friend Vic Rackers texts us with a copy out of, I don't know which paper this is, but a letter to the editor that he wrote.
I read Missouri. It's the News Tribune.
The News Tribune. And it really, I think, echoes and foretells the same kind of, I think, worry that Stephanie has expanded on at length. And we all know this will essentially, if this initiative petition essentially takes all of the purview out of the legislature for all practical purposes, it will pretty much roll back any kind of parental consent or the 24-hour notice, anything else back to like pre-1973, right? And that's going to be just catastrophic for the unborn here in this state. And so
absolutely, and we see the petition gatherers everywhere. And this would basically allow abortion up to the day of birth. I mean, these are totally viable human beings, and conception life begins at conception. And I'm sorry that people feel, that this is women's health care, because it's not.
No, and what gets me is the misrepresentation. I have had an experience, I've heard of others, where people are saying this is about women's health care rights and on and on. And when I challenge them about, it's back to Roe at a minimum and worse, because there's enough loose language in there, nebulous language that allows it up until the time of birth. Oh, no, this is 16 weeks, I was told by one signature gatherer. And that's just abhorrent that they're getting away with that. There ought to be maybe you need a bill to have some civil penalty if they're misrepresenting.
Friday in the markets, the S&P, everything was down. S&P closed down 0.65%, NASDAQ almost a full point down, Dow close to Dow closed down almost half a percentage point. Energy led the gainers, and technology and communication services were dragging us down on Friday. So far this morning, my Wall Street Journal isn't updating. So far this morning, if it decides to refresh, things are looking better. Dow, S&P, Dow's up just 0.2%, S&P up 0.8%. So maybe a better day on our Monday morning.
NASDAQ's way up this morning.
Let me check it out here.
And Feds will be wrapping up their meeting on Wednesday, right? So who knows what Powell's going to prognosticate.
Yeah, John's right. NASDAQ up 1.3% this morning so far. So could be a good day. Could be. All right. Well, we got to talk about real estate after Friday's happenings. Yeah. That case that was really important that got the realtors. There was a huge judgment. It originated here in Missouri. Huge judgment against the realtors for this whole 6% commission. It was up on appeal, but we found out Friday that the realtors, the National Association of Realtors, has settled their lawsuit as part of a $418 million settlement, and this will involve that 5 to 6% automatic commission. Folks are estimating that it could reduce that 5 to 6% commission by as much as half. And so they agreed to all sorts of different rules and provisions as part of this settlement. A lot of it had to do with these listing services that they basically have a monopoly over on, how who lists on the what is it called, the multiple listing services, and how you get into that. And it was, some people cited that as one of the things that drove up home prices. But certainly, for the everyday consumer and for people like Hannah who's looking to buy a house, not having to pay that 6% automatically necessarily is a good thing.
It seemed to be a baked in the cake thing it had a feel of monopoly to it. Now, I in the past had negotiated rates, but so there was some wiggle room there. But I think it had to do with sharing of rates too, of the commissions.
Yeah, I think you could negotiate, but it was pretty tough. And I've always thought it was bizarre because I think some people really work for that 6%, and other people work very little for the 6%.
Especially when the market was hot.
And so for someone like me who bills by the 10th of an hour, and it has to work based on my time, I thought it was just a bizarre way for getting compensated. And so I'm glad to see some reform there. The Journal also, besides that, has a kind of a new article out saying, this new home buying market is completely different than what we have had in the past. One of them was know about the commissions, negotiate your commissions, know about this lawsuit, know that you don't have to lock yourself into that 6%. It also talked about, mortgages are different these days, and it's really hard to find a good rate even on a 30-year fix. So be mindful of that.
It makes it tough if you're sort of having to move and you're having to sell your house, and you factor in that quote loss from whatever you're going to get out of the house. That really reduces your take home, and that then in this market really erodes your ability to move on to a different property when things are so there's a stagnant market.
It really does. And they said, home insurance used to be an afterthought, but you really need to start having that conversation early. According to Realtor.com, 45% of homes have some sort of climate severe weather risk, and so you really need to investigate that a bit earlier. It said maybe look at new construction, because actually that's becoming a little bit
car on an embankment. A body was found floating in the river, which reportedly the clothing did not match what was seen on him when last seen on a security camera. In addition, a lot of pushback on a Donald Trump statement during a rally on Sunday when he talked about a bloodshed or bloodbath in the economic sphere. If his 100% tariff on Chinese cars coming in wasn't able to be implemented if he weren't elected. The mainstream media is taken out of context. People are going crazy on the left, and most clear-minded people are saying another example of the unpaid arm of the Democrat National Committee known as the legacy media going crazy. But there's some important and very, very inflamed conversation, John Marsh, going on about parental leave in Cole County. Tell us about it.
This is one of those kind of deals where it's kind of in the weeds if you take a look at the story. But basically, the story is that some elected officials at the Cole County Courthouse are over at odds, and this is all about a state executive order that provides state employees 6 weeks of paid leave for primary caregivers and 3 weeks for secondary. There's been a debate over there whether or not this executive order that was issued by Eric Greitens is 7 years down the road, whether Cole County and some other counties haven't decided to take part in it.
It was an opt-in, right?
It was an opt-in.
And it was 6 weeks of paid leave for primary and 3 for secondary in 2017, Executive Order 1709 by Eric Greitens, then governor.
Yes. So, and currently they get 12 weeks of FMLA leave, but I think the sticking point is you have to be on the payroll at the county for a year. And I know some folks from the health department, I think Christy Campbell, director, and some others were questioning that if this indeed, was above board or how they're going to handle it. And we understand the Cole County commissioners are going to take up the issue in their meeting tomorrow.
Well, and I think some of it, there were emails that came out that I've seen posted online. And so some of the, I think, heartache was about the way in which the policy was talked about and the employees at issue. And I think it was an email from the HR director that was seemed to almost blame an employee that was pregnant for kind of asking or criticizing a county employee for asking about the leave policy and, to clarify. I think if you're the pregnant one and you're the one who, is...
If you've got a vested interest in asking those questions, you would think.
I had to do it to an employer because it was a small business, and I was like, what is the maternity policy here? Like, I have to make a plan, it goes faster than you think it will. It comes up faster than you think it will, and you just need clarity. Is it this or is it this? And I think, if you see that many people are adopting the state policy, why not advocate for yourself and say, hey, everyone else has adopted this. Why haven't we adopted this, and why can't we? Because it benefits me. Now, I think some of the discussion was, well, it only benefits a few people.
Well, that's what the Human Resource Director, Sheila Johnson, said to the public administrator, Ralph Jobe, when he recommended adoption of the executive order. She said, well, it only benefits a few people, a handful of employees. I don't know. So I guess the problem...
there's the question. So what happens to those employees that are affected?
Yeah, and I think, I think... FMLA leave does only benefit a handful of people. And I think, the people who need the benefit. I mean, if you're a young mom, a new mom, I think, you deserve a little bit of time off. And I think the other thing that it does, it says, it only benefits a few people. No, actually, it does benefit the county because retaining hardworking folks,
there it is right there.
Having to replace that person, train a new person, all of that is incredibly expensive. So if you've got a really good employee, offering them, and it's a different discussion if that employee is not good, then it shouldn't have anything to do with whether they're pregnant or not. But if you've got a good employee, it makes financial sense for everybody if you can implement policies that allow you to retain them.
I think the concern in this one, I have a problem with apparently the HR director criticized a county employee who was pregnant, blaming her for triggering the conversation, saying, quote, she came to work for the county knowing she was pregnant, quote, I assume. So her failure to be proactive should not result in the county's extra expense.
I don't see that argument,
Well, I do. From having managed a place, I have hired people who did not divulge some upcoming major surgery they were going to have or something. You onboard them, you make accommodation, you tell the temp agency you don't need anyone, and then 2 weeks later they're telling you they're out. I think that's relatively inconsiderate of a new employee. I think we have to balance the needs of the operation. And by the way, the coworkers take offense to that.
But think if you're a pregnant woman and if I'm 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, pregnant, you're trying to feed your family, and if I walk into that interview and I tell anybody that I'm going to need 6 weeks off 9 months from now, I'm not going to get hired, then why would you tell people that?
Look, I think certainly it's a crime. I don't know. It's not a crime. It's a civil penalty if you ask. You can't ask.
I wouldn't tell
On the other hand, having said what I just said, each case is individual, and I believe the market should rule. If someone's pregnant and they have great credentials and you've got great recommendations, it's like, hey, let's work something out here. We can make this work because we really want you to work here, But to just sort of spring it on someone like that, it seems like a one-way street to me. I don't know. I see both sides because I've been an employee and I've been an employer. Maybe folks would like to weigh in at 573-874-9390.
Yeah, I think overall, and I understand where you're both coming from. Obviously, if I were applying for a job and I had to, and I've had to do this before, when I have something going on with a mom who's ill or something else, I do disclose. And it's, by the way, I've gotten those jobs.
Now, that's right.
And I'm not saying maybe it would be different. I don't know, but I have disclosed. I think it is good to let them know. The biggest thing I want to say is FMLA, the Federal Medical Leave Act. That bill was signed by President Clinton early 1993. And he signed it, and it was written by Kit Bond. He never really got the credit that I felt Kit Bond he deserved for that. But President Clinton praised him in the Rose Garden and really singled him out in that Rose Garden ceremony in 1993 and called him his old friend, my friend from the Governors Association. They both served as governors as part of the Governors Association. So that's a big deal.
It's a touchy issue. But on the same token, okay, on the one hand, you could have 6 weeks, right? Of primary and 3 weeks. Why is that better than getting 12 weeks? Seems to me like here the exclusion of a year lockout on that 12. You can't they couldn't lock someone out. If someone was there 3 weeks and they deliver a baby, they're going to get 12 weeks off.
Well, I don't
FMLA,
know.
Right?
I don't know about children. It also the law allows someone to use that to take care of an elderly parent.
I didn't know. I didn't think they could.
I don't know
how
about that.
How could they make a limitation?
I don't know. That's more.
We need an employment lawyer to call us because I didn't think you could exclude anyone on an FMLA.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought that was federal law that you can't exclude someone no matter based on their tenure with the company. I guess you can, or else Cole County wouldn't be doing it. But
yeah, it's interesting.
Hannah?
Well, and now you see a lot of companies starting to offer paternity leave in addition to maternity leave.
Yeah.
Like I know my husband is a state employee and he'll get 6 weeks of paid paternity leave when the time comes for us.
Uh-huh.
And that's fairly new. I don't remember hearing about that in the past, but yes, I've heard that too. And it gives the father a chance to spend some time.
So what happens when we have a recession? We have a glut of workers, and now there's too many workers. Then it's going to be advantage employers, and you don't think employers might say, "Hey, now it's my turn"? I mean, I think we have to be careful. This dovetails into an interesting article in last week's Wall Street Journal about how Gen Z just doesn't want to work. I mean, that was essentially the bottom line. They just don't want to work.
Here we go again.
There's Wall Street Journal, not Randy. It's an interesting thing,
I think Steph had the best argument about it, just from being a recruiting and retention tool.
Yeah,
for
I agree.
A county,
that's what
if
makes
Boone
sense.
County has this and Cole County doesn't, what's to stop somebody from going presumably with a higher paycheck and more benefits?
Right.
Yeah, it's just it is an intro. It'll be very fascinating. John will keep us up to date on
Wouldn't
that.
Wouldn't that HR director be in a little bit of trouble if sort of outing someone as
I don't
being
know.
pregnant? I don't know. Isn't that
again? I'm not.
That seems like a slippery slope there to me.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney.
Gotta be careful.
Somebody like Jen Bukowski would have to weigh in on that. Those are legal issues. Quite frankly, I've not heard of before until today.
Yeah. Here's Mike on line 1. Mike, what say you? Welcome into the program.
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm just going to say a few comments. You guys can agree or disagree. So I personally had to take FMLA when my kid was born because they only gave my wife 6 weeks of paternity leave. We had no way of having anybody watch her, so I had to take 3 months of FMLA off just to watch her. I think it's criminal that the women don't get the necessary time off to spend with their kids. The other issue is that if the mom dies in birth, the father's not getting paternity leave. The mother was getting paternity leave. So what does the father do then if the mom dies in birth and he's stuck with the kid with no leave act to help him besides FMLA? The other issue I want to state is that the pregnancy recruiting thing doesn't only apply to pregnant women. It also applies to people who are in the National Guard or the military service. If you disclose that you're in the National Guard during an interview process and they know that you're going to be gone for 2 weeks, a month, or however many times a year, your chances of getting that job also plummet.
Or if, like me, you honor military people, then you might get a leg up on that.
Some do. I was actually not selected for a job simply because of that. So, and I was told that it was because
I don't know,
of that.
but let me ask you this, Mike. Let's zoom out. Constitutional republic, 18 enumerated powers of the federal government. And you can then say the state has, do you want the state to have control over you if you're a businessman, businesswoman? Does the state really have anything? Is the state are they too integrated into our lives? And this is just another example. I'm sure there are plenty of employers who would be happy to provide parental leave. Others who won't. Let the market decide. Why does the government have anything to do with this? Just asking the question.
So, man, nobody wants the government involved in their lives, but then there are certain things that the government needs to secure for you. So if your employer is like, hey, yeah, spit out the baby and get back to work in the next 2 days, why would you ever want to work for them? I get it. You go find another job. Some people are not able to find those other jobs so quickly, or in a situation where that's the only job they can take. For the government to come in and be like, hey, look, you can do these certain things, but you have to let people have some time off to raise their kids a little bit. I'm totally okay with it.
You know what? I morally and ethically understand the argument, but from a constitutional, limited government standpoint, I land that I want the government to have a soft touch on our lives. If we're going to justify this, then we ought to be in favor of universal basic income and minimum wages and everything else. And it gets into a real housing, affordable housing. The government ought to provide housing for you if you're. That's not the way this government was ever set up to be. And I think we have to continually ask the question, is this truly a public safety issue? Is it a national security issue? That's what I want.
Well, so what were we supposed to do if I didn't have FMLA? What was I supposed to do with my kid after we had it?
Yeah, quit your job, right?
How are we supposed to watch it? Am I supposed to quit my job and then pay and then work by myself on a single income? It's some of these things. No,
I understand. I guess I'm hearkening back to a time when families were nuclear and Stephanie, you said what, next week, right? And yeah, maybe summer on spring break this week. I'm not sure, but in local, I think you did a survey of most of the schools, Southern Boone, and you say Jeff City and others. But
Mizzou.
Spring break fears that it's going to be a fentanyl disaster. Spring break authorities down in Florida flooded with deadly party drugs, which could be 100% fentanyl. Dealers are exploiting the chaos, according to the Daily Mail, to peddle illegal substances and target youngsters. So, I mean, haven't we had enough on campus, enough of these substances ravaging our children's health and leaving them paralyzed in some cases, and whether it's booze or in this case fentanyl, which is much more deadly at a much lower dose, and is so opaque in how it can hurt you. Health officials are braced for a spike in accidental overdoses. They're handing out over 5,000 doses of naloxone, which is, of course, used to reverse fentanyl's effects. Man, if you've got a relationship with a young person who's going down to spring break, maybe you're an aunt or an uncle or a grandma and grandpa, sometimes you might have more influence than their parents, because, their parents are stupid at that age. What do your parents know until the kids grow up? And then you get suddenly smarter. But it's just so concerning to me. I wanted to bring it up, and I wanted to play something. This was from an interview, a Fox News interview on with a reveler already. Listen to what she says.
So tell me, how do y'all start y'all's day?
Morning routine, 2 things you can't live without. 2 things you can't live without. Bronzer and cocaine. Wake up, put on bronzer, cocaine, we're good for the day.
Bronzer, then cocaine.
And now I'm a senior in college, and here I am. Yeah, my 2...
Bronzer and cocaine. Look, it's a reality. They're playing with this stuff, and they're down there unsupervised. They're buying it on the street. They may be told that it's some kind of a Valium or it's a prescription Percocet. And these days, it can look identical with the same identification marks, the same brand name stamp. Just beg them, if you will, to be very, very
careful.
They
buy what they think's a line of Coke, and it turns out to be fentanyl.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot more this year than perhaps we hear other years. So, they don't have good judgment. Those wires aren't connected yet, Stephanie.
Apparently not.
So we got to warn them.
March Madness is here.
Yeah, that's right. It is. Spring break madness, too, indeed. And the brackets are out. Do you bracket? I don't do the brackets.
Yeah.
No.
I like to watch. I'm sad about Mizzou this year.
Hannah, you do the brackets? John?
Yeah, I have to.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow on Wake Up. Take care.